Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Quick shout out to Matt Warren. We'll get to it in a second, but he sent me one of these barrels, or one of these barrel picks that we're going to be sipping on today. But this whole video is about barrel picks, and you might hear the term store picks. Maybe you're like, I don't know what those are. I've heard of them. How do I get involved in them? Where do I pick up these bottles? So we'll talk all about that. We'll answer all of those questions here in today's video. Now, in terms of what is on the table today, we have two barrel picks from New Riff. And so one of these actually comes from a local liquor store where they did a barrel pick. And we're going to compare it to the other one, which was sent to me by one of my patrons, Matt Warren. Thank you so much, Matt. You've been very generous already, so I'm looking forward to diving into this. And this was selected by a club that he's a member of, the Hub City Bourbon Club. So that's pretty cool. So this is their pick that they came up with. So we'll talk about what barrel picks are, how do you get involved in them, and where do you pick up these bottles? So first thing we got to do is mention that here in America, we have what's called a three-tiered system. So I can't just go to a distillery and buy liquor from their barrels directly and just bring it home. It doesn't work like that. So the distillery has to sell their product to a distributor. The distributor has to sell that product to a retailer. And then it goes from the retailer to us, the consumers. That's how the system works here. So I can't just go there, pick a barrel, and take it home, a big barrel on my shoulder and bring it home. It doesn't work like that. If we are going to get involved in doing a barrel pick, we have to basically go through a retailer or partner with a retailer somewhere along the line if we're going to make that happen. But essentially what is happening is a group of people, hopefully you're involved, maybe you're not, maybe you're just buying a pick that someone else did, but a group of people is going to the distillery oftentimes, or in other cases they're doing a private sampling at a remote facility, maybe at the store who's partnering with them, and they're going to be sampling lots of different barrels from the warehouses of this distillery. So you have a lot more control over the unique flavor profile of a bottle ultimately that you're going to be purchasing, because New Riff has single barrel bottles out there, right? And you can buy those at any point, but you didn't get to make the choice. Somebody else made that choice for you. And other things like oftentimes Old Forester will do barrel picks of their Old Forester 100. You know, I've got a bottle of that on the shelf over here. But again, that's a blend of different barrels, all proofed to 100 together and bottled up. So it's a blend of several barrels to get a flavor profile that they have decided they're going for a blend of their barrels to achieve. So if you're doing a barrel pick or someone else is doing a barrel pick, they get to sample those barrels individually, and maybe one of them really stands out to them. Like, oh, this is what I'm really after. I want an Old Forester that's just full-bodied, very viscous, coats the mouth, oily, lots of congeners got through, and it's got these big, bold flavors, rich caramels. And you want to dial back on maybe the spice. And so you find a barrel that fits the profile that you're after, or maybe one surprises you and you're like, I didn't even know I wanted that. But now that I've tasted it, now that I've sampled it, I'm all in, baby. And that's the pick that you do. So that's essentially what's happening. You have a lot more control over the individual bottle that you're ultimately going to be purchasing. Now here's the catch. A barrel, on average, is going to yield about 200 bottles of bourbon or booze, whatever you're buying. Roughly 200 bottles. Now, that's pretty pricey if you were going to be doing this yourself. Like if you were to go by yourself, pick out a barrel, partner with a store that's going to, broker that exchange, and you're going to buy all 200 bottles. That's a really expensive investment, isn't it? So oftentimes it's a club of people, it's a group of people that are making this investment together. Or a lot of times the retailer themselves will say, we've got a relationship with the distiller. You bring your club in, and we'll have people who represent the store, and you'll have people who represent your club all come in, and we'll sample these together, and it'll be a democratic system where we'll sample these things, we'll take our notes, and we're all going to vote for the barrel that we want to pick together. So it's a bit of a democratic process. Both parties get to be represented in the barrel pick. And ultimately, you also split the cost of that barrel because it is a big financial investment to buy a full barrel of bourbon. And obviously, the markup of having the experience, of not having it just be a bottle on the shelf that you buy. Obviously, you're going to pay a little bit of a premium to be involved and have some more control over the process. So it is expensive. So you split that financial investment with the retailer themselves. They'll take half of the bottles and put them on their shelves because now they can market that to their patrons. But then you and your club get to take, maybe 100 just for your club, divvy them up among each other. Whoever wants to buy a bottle can do so. Now, there is also sort of some etiquette involved in doing a barrel sampling and tasting and a pick together. Some things that you have to remember. So if you're ever involved in one of these things, you don't want to just show up and not be prepared for it. A couple of tips. These aren't mandatory, but these are kind of things that will impress the representative from the distiller who's bringing the samples. If you come prepared, they're going to take you more seriously if you show up to the tasting prepared for it. First thing, the sensory process of enjoying a sample is a big deal to these people. So it is common etiquette to not wear any fragrances to a tasting because you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with other people in close proximity. You want people to be able to smell that sample without any interference. So that means don't spray on Axe body spray on your way out the door. And I'm serious about this, people will be adamant about this in some of the more hoity-toity clubs. They won't want you to use scented laundry detergents for the clothes that you wear to the sampling. And that's like the extreme end of it. That most people aren't going to care about that. But if you're going to make an impression, I would say it doesn't hurt anything to show up very well prepared. If anything, some of these the reps from the distillery are actually going to take you more seriously because of it. They're going to be like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy knows his stuff. But you also want to dress for the occasion. So if you're going to the distillery to do a barrel pick, one of the things you have to remember is that oftentimes these rick houses that you're going to be walking through and taking samples out of these barrels, especially if it's in the summertime, they're going to be hot. All right, that's sort of the whole process of aging whiskey in barrels is about that heat-cold exchange and the inside the barrel, that whiskey is going from a liquid to a vapor and being absorbed into the wood and then condensing again. And it's that hot-cold, vapor and condensation process that creates the flavors and the flavor exchange process that happens in the barrel. So it might be very hot in there. So show up, wear some extra antiperspirant if you need to, if you're going to a rick house to do this. But oftentimes, especially post-COVID, a lot of these samplings happen actually at the retailer instead of at the distillery. So for someone like me in Michigan, that's actually better if I'm going to sign up and be a part of a tastings panel for one of these things. It's easier for me to just drive to the liquor store and do it there instead of driving down to Kentucky or wherever it may be to do it right there on site, even though that may be a cooler experience. Now, when you go to one of these sampling sessions, one of the things you have to remember is this is coming out of the barrel. It's going to be at barrel proof, so it's going to be pretty hot in terms of the alcohol content. So make sure that you have a fair amount of food in your belly. You don't want to go hungry to a sampling of high-proof bourbons because you're going to get knocked on your butt before you can finish the sampling and take all the notes you want to take. And since they are at high proof, the reps who are brokering this whole thing, they are going to have water on hand. And it's not just for you to hydrate, like that is a part of it too. You just definitely want to hydrate and cleanse your palate, all that stuff. But it's also there so that you can drop drops of water into the sample. So you want to taste it at barrel strength first, and then later add in some drops of water to sort of maybe open it up, dilute it a little bit. And this isn't something to be looked down on. This is something they expect you to do because almost all whiskey is diluted from barrel strength unless it is specifically labeled as barrel proof on the bottle. Almost all of it is proofed down to where the distiller has decided they want it to be for the flavor profile that they're after. So it's very common. The water's there for you to use it and dilute these samples to try and get some more flavors out of it other than just the heat of the alcohol. And then also you're definitely going to want to circle back to the first sample, the first barrel that you did, because it's also sort of accepted as common knowledge among these things that your palate has to warm up and there's a certain bias against the first barrel, against the first sample that you taste. So that's why even in things like blind tastings, a lot of times people will then circle back to the first drink that they had in that lineup and revisit it to get a better understanding for its flavor profile because they weren't really warmed up for it on the first sip. So make sure you revisit that first barrel sample as well. So you may wonder, like, what's the draw of this? Why would you want to do this other than just having some control over the flavor of the final product? You or the store or the retailer or your club will get a custom label on the bottle itself ultimately, because after you've selected the barrel, you came to a conclusion about which barrel you're going to purchase together, then it goes back to the distillery. They're going to drain the barrel, bottle it up, and then they're going to give you a custom label. And then on these, I'll make sure to get a close-up shot of these for you for the video, but the label itself has a custom sticker that shows the Hub City Bourbon Club, or in this case, the other barrel that I bought, Total Wine, the logo for their store is printed right there on the label. But then it also shows on the label oftentimes tasting notes of your specific barrel. And in a second, I'm going to compare these two, and we'll see what different flavor profiles we can pull out of these. And I'll probably have my wife pour them, so I'm blind, pick my favorite, and then read the notes that they wrote down, because I don't want to have that bias either. But another reason you might want to do one of these barrel picks is because not every barrel pick is created equally. Like, different distilleries will put their own unique spin on it. Like Whistle Pig will often put you up in special guest rooms there at the distillery to stay on the farm, make a whole experience out of it. They'll give you a personal chef for your group even. And you've got Maker's Mark, and they basically take you on a full journey through the process where they're going to let you taste the White Dog, the distillate right off of the still, so you can know what Maker's Mark tastes like when it first comes off the still with no barrel influence. Because they're trying to give you a frame of reference so that when you're doing the tastings, you can see how that distillate has changed over time based on what warehouse it was in, what level of the warehouse it was at, how that unique barrel may have contributed unique flavors to that distillate as opposed to a different barrel. So they want you to take you on this whole journey. They'll even let you taste samples of their yeast to understand the yeast influence as well. And then obviously, like I said, when you make the pick, and then it goes back to the distillery and they drain that barrel, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to potentially proof it down to your group's liking. If you have made choices about what proof you want it to be at, they will try to honor that to a certain degree. Now, for example, these two barrel picks I have here, one of them is 106.4 proof, the other one is 107.4 proof, so not the same proof, obviously different barrel, but then also it has been proofed down a little bit because in the barrel you're looking at, give or take, you're around the 115 to like 122 proof range. So you can even have a little bit of control over what the final proofing looks like. And then that leads us to the final question that I want to answer. How do you get involved in barrel picks, right? So there's a number of ways that you can get involved. First is probably the easiest way would be to find stores near you that do barrel picks. And you can oftentimes sign up to be on a waiting list to be involved in one of the sampling groups. So they'll have sign-up sheets to let you know when their store picks are going to be happening. And eventually, if you're on a waiting list, your name will come up in the queue. They will contact you. Whatever means they tell you they're going to contact you. And they'll say, hey, you're up for the next barrel selection that we're going to do. It's with this distillery. Would you like to do this one or hold out for another one? And you might say, no, I don't want to do this one. I want to wait because I know the next one's going to be Four Roses, and I've always wanted to do a single barrel pick of Four Roses. And they'll try to honor that. Or you can say, yes, absolutely, I've been waiting forever. Sign me up. I can't wait to do one of these. So that would be the easiest way. It's not fast, but it's the easiest way to get yourself in a queue and get involved. Another way is there's a number of websites that broker these deals as well, and you can be on, again, you'll have to sign up, you'll be in a queue on a website, and like some of these bourbon groups out there that will do these picks. So you join the group, for free, and you're in their discussion forums, you sign up for a barrel pick, and they'll have a schedule, and you can get involved that way. Otherwise, you can obviously join a club. Sometimes that's through a website. Sometimes it's just a local group. And you can do an online search to see if there are any whiskey clubs in your area that you can get involved with. And they often do barrel picks as well. And they'll probably already have a relationship with a retailer, like we talked about earlier in the video, to do these barrel picks with. Okay, so now I'll have my wife come in here and pour these for me and give me a sample of each. And then hide under the coaster which one is which. And then I'll taste them, I'll probably try to pick a favorite, but we'll also talk about how these bottles are different. And then you can sort of get an idea for what the differences can be when you go and do one of these barrel selections. And then you understand why people might do this, so they can find a unique flavor profile that really speaks to their group. All right, so she poured 2 samples here. I don't know which one's in which, but let's try them out, shall we? So this is the same distillate, right? Exact same distillate that came off New Riff's stills for their their Kentucky Straight Bourbon mash bill, right? And then what we're going to see is specifically how barrel influence can change the flavor of the distillate. So these will not taste exactly the same, at least I'm hoping they don't, because then that would make this whole video kind of silly then, wouldn't it? But I want to do a series on flavor creation in whiskey anyways, so I'd love to cover the mash, the mash bill, what goes in, and then the mashing process, and then the distillation process, and then the barreling and warehouse influence. I want to talk about all of those different steps of flavor creation along the way, because a lot of people, I think, focus on different parts of that journey that the whiskey takes, and they leave out the rest. And I think there's some important stuff in there that gets overlooked often. But anyways, let's start with the one on my left, your right. So I do know that New Riff has a decently higher rye mash bill for their bourbon, but it is still sweet. On the nose, I definitely get that minty, clean rye, but there's also the sweet stewed corn in there as well. Maybe even a little bit of citrus. It's bright and kind of floral. It makes me think of like green apple comes to mind. Not like a dark colored fruit like a grape or a raisin or a date or a cherry. It's more like your bright fruits. Apple. A little bit of dusty corn, a big rye punch like peppercorns up front. A lot of that floral quality does kind of translate to the palate quite nicely. A tannic oaky finish. I would say that's actually pretty different from, hang on, time out. So this is New Riff's Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Obviously you can tell the bottling is the same, similar. Labeling's a little different because it's not a single barrel selection. But this is at 100 proof, so 50% ABV. And the one I'm drinking right now is either 106 or 107.4. So a little bit more of the alcohol heat, but one key difference, because I've drank plenty of this before, but one key difference I can pick out immediately is that the standard Kentucky Straight Bourbon from New Riff is much sweeter. I do like their bourbon quite a bit. Their ryes are the things that really stand out to me. But I can tell you that this single barrel selection, because obviously this is a blend of barrels, but the single barrel selection in the first sampling that I'm doing today has much more of that rye punch to it that's come through. And it's not nearly as viscous or oily. It's more of like a clean spirit, it feels. Yeah, that floral rye spice for sure. I'm not sure that I get a lot of the apple on the palate, though, that I got on the nose. But that's quite tasty. Let's move on to the second one. It might just be me, but I think that the second sampling looks a little bit darker, too. That's interesting because a number of times you think like Scotland with their scotches, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll add your caramel coloring. And it's not because they want to trick you. It's more because they don't want 2 bottles on the shelf next to each other of the same product that look like a different color. So they do it for uniformity. But this is quite interesting to see the same product. The only difference is the barrel, and this one took on more barrel color. It is clearly darker. I'm going to show you. Oh, wow. The nose is actually quite different. Much more caramely on the nose on this one. Like your sweet caramel. More of that stewed corn. Not a lot of fruit on the nose on this one. A little bit of that peppercorn spice, though. Somewhat minty. But I don't think quite as much as this one. This one, the sweet side of it comes through a little bit more clearly. Let's go in on it. You get more of that dusty corn kind of a vibe on this one. That oak presence comes through quite nicely as well. Toasted oak. You still get some of that rye spice as well, that minty kind of a vibe, and the peppercorns. But I think that The corn side of the mash is the star of this one. And on the first sample, the rye part of the mash is coming through quite strong and is sort of the star of the show, with the corn being the best supporting actor. The key difference between this one and their standard Kentucky Straight Bourbon is that dusty corn vibe comes through a little bit more strong, and those caramel notes and vanilla notes. So that being said, I am going to pick which one I think I like more. They both kind of stand out against this as clearly being their own thing, as opposed to a blend of barrels for their Kentucky Straight whiskey. So you can definitely see how barrel influence varies from barrel to barrel. So this one, the one that Matt Warren and his club selected, was distilled in April of 2018. It was bottled in August of 2022, so that's a 4-year. The one from Total Wine is considerably older. It was distilled in December of 2016 and bottled in October of 2021. So that one was closer to 5 years in the barrel. This one was closer to 4. All right, I'm going to pick a favorite, and then we'll reveal which one of them is which. But my favorite, I think I'm going to pick the second one that I tried. Let me validate it first, though. And they're both unique and both quite tasty. But I think I'm going to pick this one as my number one. Let's find out what it is. Hey! It's Matt Warren's Club. Hey, you guys did a great job. That's a delicious drink, which means this one is Total Wine. So the Total Wine one I picked up at Total Wine. I went to Total Wine, and they usually have in their whiskey section, they have in the middle of the aisle like barrels that are set up, and on top of those barrels are their store picks, and you can try them out and take them home, buy them, and you can see what barrel influence can really do to a whiskey. It's kind of fun to buy both a store pick and buy the standard product at the same time if you can afford it, because it's fun to compare the two and see what that barrel influence can really do to a whiskey. But there you go, Matt. I picked y'all's. Congratulations to you and your club. That's a delicious new riff dram right there. So that is barrel picks and store picks. What they are, how to get involved, what kind of character you can get out of these whiskeys if you get involved in one of these things. So hopefully that answered any questions you might have. If you have more, feel free to leave them in the comments section. I'll try to answer any of those that I can. Thank you for the support of the channel. Thank you so much to my patrons who have been very dedicated in supporting me and this offshoot channel that I'm doing. It's been a ton of fun for me. I am quite enjoying myself over here on Dramguard. And I do have plenty of other content lined up and ready to go. The next video will probably be a whiskey cocktail that's one of my absolute favorite whiskey cocktails on the planet. It has no right being as good as it is, and I can't wait to make one for you and walk you through the process and what I love about it. Looking forward to all the content on the horizon. Thank you so much for being involved in the content so far and supporting it with your viewership. I really love and appreciate that. If you have been enjoying the content, please do me a favor. It's great if you could leave a like on the video and a comment on the video. Those are great ways to interact with the video to give it a boost in the algorithm, so YouTube says, hey, I think people might be liking this stuff. Maybe we should put it out there for more viewers to find it. That's like the best free way you can support. If you want to support the channel directly, feel free to go to Patreon. I've got a link to my Patreon in the description and pinned comment. You can go there and join the others who are supporting me actively there. And we like to have whiskey-based discussions over there, talk about what we're drinking, what we're liking, and have some fun over there interacting with each other. So I'd love to see you over there as well. Thank you so much. Be warm and well fed. May you live richly and get better with age. Cheers.